G'day mate, and welcome to Friday Facts 269, the roadmap and the transport belt perspective. Basically, when is 017 coming out? That pretty much sums it up, right, Mojo?
Yes.
Yep.
And the answer is not Feb 30.
I don't know. My money's...
It is looking pretty promising.
My money's on Feb, but we'll get to that as we go through it. So, going through the Great Wall of Text, and I've pre-highlighted so you guys can read ahead if you want, and I've made it nice and big so hopefully you can read it on a mobile. A lot of people are asking, when is the game going to be finished? Original plan was finish everything and then release the final version of Factorio, which I personally think is a ridiculous idea because there was too much they were trying to squeeze into 1.0, and do it before the end of 2018. This was the plan at the beginning of the year. We worked in our usual it's done when it's done, which I agree with. You know, get a final version and be happy with it rather than just release it like so many AAAs do. But then
I don't agree with it.
Oh, really?
No, see, it's done when it's done. Where the whole thing, it works when you're a startup. Now they're not a startup anymore. They're, the startup thing that was good for 2016. It doesn't really fly now. Now you need tight schedules.
You need a schedule. I think is more accurate. Not tight. It just has to actually exist.
Yeah,
and
that's actually what's alluding to in the next paragraph. Is that it looks like that Kavarex has discovered the wonderful world of actually getting organized and having a schedule and a task list.
Yeah, look. That's basically what it says. To help with this, we became a little bit organized the past week. We went through all lists of development tasks, tried to finalize it, removed all the things we decided to cut, and added things we were missing to the game before it was finished. Then we started to be more conscious of who's working on what, which I can't believe they didn't have that to start with. Like, know who was working on what bit of the game.
Yeah.
And how much time each task is taking, which I know with programming, yeah.
It's a very they're variable goalpost.
It is. To know how accurate the estimates are always very, very wrong. The result was, if all goes well, we could be done in 6 to 9 months. So that is version 1.0 in theory, which is, yeah. And after a few rounds of discussions, we decided to split the release of 17 and 18 in the following way. The 17 plan will contain all the things we've done up to this point, mainly the new rendering backend, the graphical updates, the GUI reskin, the map editor, the resource generation overhaul, robot construction tools, rich text. It'll also include a few more things. So they're all done. They're done and in the game in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not finalized, but they're in.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I know you have more access than the rest of us, but
most of it's there.
According to the Friday Facts, they're in, they're done, they're mostly there. They're also redoing some of the most important GUIs, the action bar, the character screen, the main game GUI, train GUI, play GUI, tooltips, fluid optimizations, which I'm excited and worried about, and
I haven't yet to see anything of much of that.
And several smaller things which depend on how it goes. And I have all these Friday Facts on tabs, so... A Fistful of Frames was one of them, which is how they were doing the renderer, and we'll just scroll through that really quickly. The Modern Blighter, which we covered the other week. The high-resolution turrets, which we heard of months and months ago.
Yeah, they were actually around back in like version... I think when version 16 was about to come originally.
They were in Feb at this year, so just after 16 dumped... The high-resolution turrets were done, and at the same time, just one update or two updates before that, they dumped some high-res graphics into the 16 point whatever, and they released more versions of 16 past high-res turrets. They just never put it in the final game.
They appeared and then sort of disappeared.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I saw them last year.
Well, as I said, it was in Feb. We've got the high-res defensive turrets with lasers that don't go pew-pew. They actually shoot a laser beam and flamethrowers, and the artillery looks the same, I think. The new GUI offset, which, yeah, we're all wondering whether it's going to work or not. Sound design and map editor.
Into that.
Well, the sound design and map editor I'm interested in, because we get the new spawners to go with the new biters. And the map editor should be awesome because I tried making a map in the current version.
Yeah, no.
Oh.
Yeah, no. Yeah, the map editor I think is pretty well done now, from what I understand.
And then we've got the resource allocation, which should tip the balance a bit higher in iron, and then coal, and then copper, and then coal stone at the bottom with uranium, and hopefully not give us an oil problem again. The copy paste that we're all looking forward to. The rich text without being able to put iron and green
Symbols
circuits and symbols in
changing
the text.
the color.
Yeah.
Which is completely useless.
And then moving around the tags with the robots deconstruct cliffs. And this didn't do landfill, did it? No.
You know how, with the rich text, you know how everyone labels every damn patch of
Yeah,
resource?
I know.
Now you're going to have it all color-coded and everything.
Look, it's counterintuitive.
Rainbow.
I hate that people do that, but then again, it sort of gives me a feeling of accomplishment when I see that the number did say 15 million and now it says 500k left. And yeah, I was like, shit, that was 15 million. It's gone. So that's all the things in 17, which we will release during January 2019 and we'll announce it more precisely in advance. My money's on Feb.
I wonder if it'll slide to April. Was it April? Like 15 did, where it was set to be like December, and then it started becoming January, and then February, and it just kept sliding and sliding.
So I'd have to look it up, but I did Factorio. I did a whole series of Factorio in 14, pre-recorded where my channel was brand new, and then was editing it and uploading it, and then 15 dropped. And I'm going to go with, so 16 came out in the middle of last year. I'm going to go with like April, May last year as well. 15 dropped.
It was about March, I think April. 16 was December.
November, late November.
Oh, late November.
Yeah. I remember 16 dropping because it came out some ridiculous time for us and I was straight on. I had 3 videos done in that night. I didn't sleep much, but, I had 3 videos out. So then on to the Friday Facts. 18 plan. The 18 will become the version 1.0 once it's stable. It will contain the new tutorial, the new campaigns, the final mini tutorials, the revision of the GUI, the rest of the GUI, all remaining high-res graphics, and a final polish, and we don't know when that's going to be, but we hope it's sooner than 9 months from now. 12 months. Done.
Yep, 12 months.
12 months for that one, and I'm really hoping that as they do the GUI, they dump it into 17. Because it's going to be a little bit odd to have half new, half old.
Yeah. I can see more changing from 17 to 18.
Yeah, well, if they do... What do they say they're going to do? The GUI reskin. Which doesn't give us a lot of details.
Probably means reskin. Wait, so there's 2 things, isn't there? There's reskin. And then there's revision of the rest of the... So I wonder if reskin sort of implies...
Maybe they're going to have like a if you remember the old Command and Conquers, that they had the stuff around the outside.
Yeah. I think that'll come later.
I don't know. Like, I'm 50-50 on that sort of GIF on the screen. I know it was a big thing in the 90s, but nowadays most graphical interfaces are it is the interface so you can act or react to the game and provide you important stats. It is nothing else. There's no pretty details around the edge. Oh, a little bit. They Are Billions had like the bottom HUD and it had like details, same as Diablo does, between the edge of the HUD and the start of the game. But Factorio is really, really minimalistic in its HUD interface. So yeah, I don't know.
In general, user interfaces are going for a very minimalist approach currently.
Yeah.
So going for that craziness would look very out of place.
Yeah, it's the things I'm looking for in 18 are the tutorial and the campaign.
Yeah, it sounds like that's really been a struggle lately.
It is, and I'd like some way to provide input, but I guess the only way I can provide input is by having a copy of the game that has that stuff in it, so I can play through those things and go, no, that doesn't make sense, or that does make sense, or you're not teaching players this, because it came up during my stream today. You know, people asked, what am I looking forward to? Have I read the Friday Facts? I'm like, yeah, I have, and it's way down the list. You know, the whole side loading onto undergrounds is not taught in the game anywhere, and I think it's one of those things that should be taught, and you don't just stumble on it.
It was something that sort of just came about at some point. It wasn't really known as a thing originally.
I think it's like, at the end of the day, I think it's really a bug in the code that we found a use for, and then it's never been fixed, and now it's a part of the game.
I don't think it was a bug so much. It just happened to something that just happened to be in there.
So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I'm looking forward to 17.
Yep.
I expect it'll be late. I expect it'll be Feb. I'm looking forward to 18, especially a tutorial, just so I can play through the tutorial. And if I ever watch, because I've watched a couple of streamers recently playing Factorio for the first time, and oh, it's horrible. So I'm looking forward to playing through the tutorial once, playing through the actual campaign, because after I just played Surviving Mars, and it doesn't really have a campaign either. But I'm also playing through the Colonists, which actually has a campaign, and I think it's one of those things that Factorio's been missing for quite some time, an actual proper campaign that you can sit down and play through and see where you get to, and have something to push back against that's probably better than Biters, but you know, Biters is all we get at the moment.
Well, their campaign was planned to be something that I remember they were talking about, where the map expands instead of going to new levels. Every time they finish,
it expands, which is something that's been, again, Command & Conquer Red Alert. There was lots of maps in there where you started, you made a little base, and then it's like, oh, by the way, you've got to take out 3 bases on the other side of the map. Here's the rest of the map that you can look at, and you're like, oh shit. So
I wonder if they're waiting on some more scripting rework and back-end stuff to really get that done, and that's why it's been pushed back to 18.
They probably are, because I don't know how the code looks, but I do know that trying to get a map to expand currently is probably going to be very, very difficult. I do know with void tiles, you could unvoid a tile and then it would randomly generate, but they don't want randomly generated, they want preset items, you know, preset tiles.
Yes.
And I don't know whether the game can do that without forcing a new level load.
Or at least having some kind of array of pre-programmed tiles.
Yeah, I don't know. So we're going.
There's a few other ways to do it, but yeah, moving on.
Yeah, moving on. Transport belt perspective. So our camera angle is 45 degrees, which in real projection would result in rectangular tiles, but Factorio, this is contradicted by our tiles being square. This contradiction makes a whole lot of changes we're addressing more and more over time. You might remember the old rails, concrete with grid, and trains that did not stretch, which I remember the damn trains.
They still stretch?
Yeah, they stretch now, but like in the past, if you were loading it, horizontally it was 6 tiles, vertically it was 5 tiles, or other way around?
Horizontally it was 7, vertically it was 5.
Yeah. And I don't get, like, our camera angle is 45 degrees. It's not really 45 degrees. It's really a very top-down.
Yeah, that was a bit odd. It's actually kind of a mixed perspective. The angle is like the buildings themselves are not 45 degrees.
No, they're
more
not.
Like 75.
Yeah, we're definitely more in front 66. Of an assembler than we are to the side of an assembler. And I pick an assembler because it's square, and you know, yeah, it just I don't get the whole 45 degree comment, but yeah, so they're going to play with belts again. The basic
got done over in 15, by the way.
Yeah, they did. They got upgraded in 15, and I'd forgotten what the old belts looked like, to be honest. And then I looked at the Friday Facts. Yeah, I know. I've got a picture here for everybody who wants to see them when we get that far. The basic idea would give the belts some kind of wall structure to bring them off the ground, create an illusion that they would fit into the world correctly. The transport belts have 2-minute limitations. The belt lane of items cannot be changed, and the belt sprites already occupy a big portion of the tile, so there's very little space to show anything extra. And I understand, you probably know this better than I do, that belts and the fact that they move 13.3 items per second has to do with the pixels of the items moving across the screen.
That's how I understand it, is that the first belt speed is 1 pixel per frame, and then 2 is 2 pixels per frame, and then blue is 3 pixels per frame.
Yeah, so it's got to do with heavy optimizations as far as I and you understand, and that's why they move an odd amount of items per second.
A seemingly bizarre division of numbers.
Yeah. Like, it's almost like somebody started at 40 and then went, well, we're going to divide that into 2/3 and 1/3, and that's going to be the magic number. Rather than...
I think it used to be 42 point something.
Really?
Yeah, for blue, and then they brought it down to 40.
Probably because they found out that they were slightly off by a portion of a quarter of a tiny bit of a pixel. Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, pretty picture of the belts. There's not a lot of room to move. We know that. It would be a shame to abandon the idea with the conclusion it's impossible. So we do physically impossible things all the time. Yeah, that engineer stands in the middle of that base. You can bring up the pollution overlay and he still breathes. So we thought exactly where we can go over the tile. So we thought of exactly where we can go over the tile edge to get more space. And I'm unsure about this.
Yeah?
Because of how our sprite sorting works, going past the bottom of the edge of the tile should be safe, which gives us the desired effect for horizontal belts and curves. Verticals need to be happy with just an extra few pixels for the structure, but on the right side we can add a shadow to show their height. And they've got a pretty picture of a belt, and I'll actually zoom all the way in for this. And you can see the belt's now actually going across the top and around the bottom and back out, and it's a true belt going depth underground. Yeah. Which, I don't know, I like the idea, but in the past I just accepted that belts just, they went A to B and they never came back to A. I just accepted it.
I think it's something that's, it's been there for so long and we never really thought about it.
I know all conveyor belts go A to B and then loop around and come all the way back to A. They have to, because that's how belts work. But
it gets kind of confusing when you look at the one which is a ring, having said that.
It does. I don't understand the ring one at all.
Because you're looking at one which is going around and around underneath itself, and then you've got one which is a ring. Although it is perfectly valid, because a different kind of conveyor belt could be like that. One where the surface is closed.
No.
Or one way or another, the belt surface has to be closed.
No, they wouldn't have the one underneath. If you think of the carousels when you go get your luggage from the airport, they're flat, they're 45 degrees, they're continuous, and they're on top. They never go underneath. And again, they're a giant ring. They're a giant loop. There is no reason to have that one on the underneath. And that's probably my problem. That's why I don't like it.
Probably because you can see the animation of the return belt underneath the ring.
Yeah.
You're going to hate me now.
Yeah, I can.
Everyone's going to... I've just ruined it for everyone.
You have. I didn't realise what I hated beforehand. Now I do. This is the smallest unit ability in the game to demonstrate the concept. You can now see how the belts reverse in the endings to see the reversing belt underneath. Yeah, that's the one above. We spent many hours with Albert, blah, 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 blah. A normal piece of belt has 4 pieces, and it took me 3 times to read this to understand that. Yeah, it's 4 individual.
Yeah, all 4 individual belt linkages.
Yeah. For the ending, 3 pieces would be too long, and with only 1 piece, you can't bend the belt. So 2 pieces is the only feasible option. This means the ending is still much longer than before, which invites a bunch of glitches and problems too. But most had easy solutions, or our sprite just handled it. Now, current belts, the items slide half off the edge of the belt. Currently in Factorio. That's how they work. Now, they're now going to slide half off that to the extra couple of pixels to the belt going down and looping back around. Which is going to bring a whole lot more credence to that silly mod that all your crap, when it gets to the edge of the belt, just dumps on the ground. Because the belt just curves under and, yeah. So, yeah, I don't know.
I don't see, like, this is purely graphical. I don't see any changing, any physics of the belts changing anytime. In fact, they're talking about how, where is it? Way back at the top. The belt lane, the lanes of items are not to be changed. So that tells me that the physics is not going to change.
Correct.
Only the graphics.
So they're not changing anything. They're just changing the graphics of the belt. Which, yeah, I'm unsure of this whole graphic update.
It's just gonna. I think you. What am I wordsing? It's too late. You're trying. You don't want to see the situation where you have these mods which just pile up stuff on the end of the belt, or pre-12, I think, or 11, when items did push off the end of a belt.
Did they? So that has to be 11, because I sort of started playing about 12-ish, and I don't remember anything ever going off the end of a belt.
I think it was a change from 11 to 12. I think it was a thing in 12 changed. Okay. It also got rid of... It might have been with getting rid of fast corners.
Fast corners were in 12, weren't they?
No.
They
12
feature.
Killed them.
Okay.
Finally.
So, continuing on with the Friday Facts. This seems to be more or less... This seems to work more or less until you realise the belt sprites are being flipped by the engine, which caused the shadows to break entirely, while the horizontal and curve lighting isn't having a great time either. The following picture you can see how each sprite has one correct and one wrong use, but it's the same sprite, so you can't fix the issue by changing the sprite without breaking the other use. And I found a really good example. It was this shadow. So this shadow's correct. This shadow is completely wrong on this side. Same with the shadows here is correct, but the shadow here is wrong. There's lots of examples, but yeah, that's correct, that's wrong. Because all the shadows are on the right-hand side, in theory, on a not 45-degree view.
Yeah, they got flipped into oblivion.
Yeah. So, therefore, we're finally getting rid of all the flipping logic for belt sprites. Originally, flipping logic was there to save as much VRAM as possible because belts used to be a significant portion of all VRAM. Nowadays, they're not. It makes little sense to save memory at all costs on one of the most visible entities in the game. Which brings me to... Is it the belts are using less VRAM, or it's just been 4 years since the game was first made and now we have more VRAM available? That's what I'm curious
I think this is a function of the new render, I would say. Okay. And also over time the rendering has become much more efficient than 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah, I know, but there's still like I haven't had an upgrade in the last 4 years, basically. So for my PC with all the high-res graphics, it's an upgrade is becoming more and more vital. And that's one of the things I worry about, because Factorio has always been one of those games that you can play on a really low-end PC. You don't need high-end graphics, you don't need a high-end CPU. You won't get as large a base, but you can play with a lower-end PC. And I worry about these sorts of things, and I worry, okay, at what point are we pushing out the lower-end PCs, which I admit everybody should have upgraded in 4 years. I'm one of them. But yeah, there's always somebody who has a low-end PC, and at what point are you pushing them out? I know the same complaint came up when Factorio went from dump their 32-bit build and just went straight 64-bit, and lots of people complained. And I'm like, yeah, by now everybody should probably be on 64.
Mostly cheapskates.
Yeah, look, I understand. You know, it's one of those things. I'm hoping that low VRAM option you can still tick it, and we'll have one or a couple of belt entities that'll just flip, and I hope they leave that bit of code in there. Okay, it breaks it entirely, but if you're ticking the option for low VRAM mode, there's obviously a reason why you're ticking that option, and it's because you know your PC sucks, so you need that extra little bit of help.
Could be like that person that was complaining about graphics issues and they were using an X1800 graphics card.
Oh, wow. Okay. Already found the flipping super weird when I was working with the high resolution belts in the Friday Facts 154. The main fact that 3 of the defined curves would always make a circle, but then the 4th would be mirrored for reasons. Now each rotation has its own unique sprites, which allows us and mods to be a lot more creative with custom belt sprites, as it's much easier to work with. I think for modders, it just means you've quadrupled their workload, because they now have to make a up, down, a left, a right, a curvy, and curvy belt.
Well, they have the initial sprite sheets to work, but they don't have to deal with any of the flipping logic anymore, which can be mind-bending.
Okay, and then I have the old Friday Facts here with the pre-15 belts and the 15 belts, and although they got an upgrade, it was far from significant. I'll put it that way.
It just made them a little bit more detailed and made them a little less sickly look.
They doubled the pixel count, basically.
Pretty much, yeah.
And I know a lot of the original graphics have been pre-made in higher resolution, and then they had the original files there to just click the button and re-render in higher resolution, but they'd rendered in a lower resolution because of the time. That's what a lot of companies do. And I think the belts was one of those. They had the higher ones there, and they're like, okay, finally we've you know, PCs have got more and more RAM. We'll just render the higher qualities and put them in the game.
I believe that's the case with the new power poles too. All of them already existed. They were just
actually, I remember that in that Friday Facts. They did change how the power hooked up to the pole. That was the only minor change they had to do. Because I remember that Friday Facts. So yeah, while we were speaking of redesigning the underground belt structures with Albert multiple times, we were speaking about redesigning the underground belt structures with Albert multiple times already as an ideal opportunity, but a redesign alone couldn't fix everything. So in the undergrounds, and the underground's now sitting on top of the belts at the top, and at the bottom they're hanging over the belt underneath. And yeah, it's a little bit funky. So the underground belt structures have always drawn above belts and icons, which means if they go below the tile border, they draw over the belts in front. Belts in the front tile, which should not happen. As you can see, neither previous problems are present in the following screenshot. So they found a problem, they fixed the problem. Basically.
They drew new undergrounds.
Yeah, they created a problem, they fixed a problem. And now the mods can define back patch, and front patch layers to underground belt structures. Just in case you want to have purple on the back and green on the front, you now can.
Ooh, all the customizations.
Yep. The new underground belt structure now feels better in the rounded shape endings and covers everything it needs to cover, but in some cases also reveals more than before. And this is the one thing I really, really like about this update. The fact that you can actually, it does that cutout for those side loading events. I really, really like that.
Oh, yes.
So that's something that's been sorely missing for a very long time, because it used to work in the past, but it's like the wall would come halfway along the item on the would side load, and it'd magically work one day. Normally because you've been running belts and then suddenly found out something was terribly contaminated and you had no idea why, and that's how you learn that you can side load into underground.
Yeah, that was usually the first introduction.
Yeah.
On that little animation, you actually see the side loading logic pulling the item from one belt to the next.
Yeah,
from
that
the
last
side
little
belt
bit
onto the main.
It's just sucked in.
Yeah.
But there is one spot on, so we're going to go with a third underground, the row. You can see it actually runs into another blue circuit and gets shoved behind it.
Yeah. Just
And
sort of get sucked in, and then they all just rearrange
yeah,
to make them fit.
yeah, they're moving that pixel thing, which means in theory we could have belts that move like 15, 30, and 45 items, just for nice, easy round numbers, because we're already shuffling pixels around. Yep, okay. And then we have this pretty little graphic, which I have
Shows
to
you the
sit
difference
here.
between the
Yeah,
two.
I have to sit here for a while and watch and let you see it. And I really recommend you physically go check this Friday Facts out just to see this image at the bottom, because it's just got a sliding bar that shows you low res to high res, and the top belt's pretty crap. The steel and stone furnaces outputting onto this T belt.
Now, that one's the most interesting because you can see the ones side loading are clearly they're given a high. They're given the perspective of force perspective that they're above. Yeah.
Yeah, which means things are falling down off the end of the belt onto the ground. So now it gives more credence to that stupid mod where everything slides off the edge of the belt. Just saying.
Or like version 11 or 10, when items were pushed one tile off the belt.
Oh, okay, that I remember.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, where you had to remove the belt before the last inserter. So the last inserter,
the item
on a
would
line of
fall
belts
off the end of the belt onto the ground, just the last item, and then the inserter pick it up.
Yeah,
so
even
maybe
though there was no belt on that tile.
12.
That wasn't in 12.
You reckon it was 11?
11 or older.
I don't remember playing 11, but I do remember that feature in air quotes.
I'm pretty sure it wasn't in 12.
Okay. I don't know.
Anyway.
I remember that feature, but I don't remember ever playing 11. So, yeah. But yeah, so and then we got the side loading down here on the uranium into the underground, which again it's beautiful. And I love the fact that we go on high res, and I think it looks a lot better, and it looks a lot more with the rivets and everything in the side of the undergrounds.
Just adds so much more.
It adds so much more. You're right, and the curves give it that much more polish.
Speaking of, those power poles are from version 6 or something. They're just rendered in a higher resolution. That was what we were talking about earlier.
Are they the high-res version of power poles? They must be.
Yeah, because, well, they're not in the current 16.
Okay. I don't know. I don't spend a lot of time looking at wooden power poles.
Yeah, I remember those in very, very old versions. Only the crappy low-res versions.
I also noticed that the splitters got an upgrade as well. Those gears in the middle are much, much more pronounced.
Even though they don't change with the graphic.
Yeah, look, let's not nitpick. It's two separate graphics, because if you go up, the steam in the pipes moves.
Yeah. What I mean is that you don't actually see the splitters change.
No. But the steam in the pipes move.
Yeah.
No, the smoke moves. So somehow they've got all the items on the belts to remain static, maybe with some lovely command that nobody ever knows about.
/ editor.
What, to stop all the items on the belt moving?
Maybe.
Maybe? Okay. But they haven't frozen the pipes. The pipes are still moving. The steam engines aren't moving because the steam is in the exact same spots, but the liquid in air quotes in the pipes is definitely in motion.
Very likely it's a composite image.
Yeah, I don't know. It's still a very, very pretty image. It is still very, very, Oh, hang on. There's a high-res train as well, is it not?
Same as normal.
Really?
Yep.
I don't remember all the detail on the left-hand side.
It's always been there.
Okay. I don't play in high-res, obviously.
Very much so. Very apparent.
No, whatever Factorio boots at, which I think's normal settings on my PC, just boots as that, and I'm like, yeah, that'll do. Go. I do so many fresh installs, I don't really pay much attention anymore. But
It's
yeah,
also, you don't normally see them at this zoom level.
correct. Factorio is very much a very zoomed out game.
So a lot of detail gets missed. Anyway, you're at 30 minutes now. You're over 30 minutes.
I know. So, we're going to leave it there because it's really, really late. It's almost 11 o'clock for both of us on the Saturday. This is a Saturday Factorio Saturday Facts, right?
Pretty much.
Yep. So, we're going to leave it there. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching. And we'll see you in the next one. Right.
See ya.
Bye.